how important is to follow your brain versus following your heart.
Most founders who are successful had a very strong belief in. Elon Musk started Tesla when the whole world told him that electric cars is a no-go, and aligning people to his vision till such time that it actually became a reality. And then
I personally feel that we are somewhere lagging compared to a country like a US.
Yes, there is a big difference. That is evolving now, where people are starting to look at the best thing to move forward is to do.
So what can we do to create more Googles, Facebook, Teslas of the world from India?
India has a lot of unique problems, right? So anybody who's solving for Bharat, anybody who is actually looking at India is a largely agrarian economy, and we've seen only few companies come up in the agri-tech space, for example. We have, again, unique challenges where we have a highly distributed population. Rural healthcare still continues to be a challenge.
One thing which I've seen founders struggling a lot is how to institutionalize your value system.
It's very easy to build the business in Excel, put a formula, and then every quarter you're supposed to just grow. But
welcome to Game Room. I'm your co-host Naveen Tiwari, and we have Pushkar with us today. He's a co-founder of Drip Capital, which is a fintech organization which basically focuses on trade finance and working capital requirements. So I will let Pushkar talk a little bit more about Drip, and then we'll proceed from there.
Sure. No, thanks for having me. I think I'm glad to be here on the show. As you mentioned, Drip is a trade financing and facilitation platform for small businesses. We fundamentally believe that small businesses are underserved globally. And I guess that was the reason why we started Drip. And our mission is to really sort of level the playing field for small businesses. And currently, as we speak, we are essentially focused on two kinds of product offerings. One is trade finance, because working capital and access to capital is a huge challenge for many small businesses. And the second product we also focus on now is sourcing or commerce. So essentially the idea is that because we've been in the business for very long, we know a lot of suppliers, buyers. So can we leverage that and essentially be able to offer a seamless sourcing solution for small businesses who are looking to procure goods?
Sure. So Pushkar, I think Drip Capital, I believe that is now very renowned, and I think you have spoken a lot about Drip Capital in terms of your business model, how you went about starting your business. I think you are an Ivy League student yourself, and then you worked with some of the VCs as well as private equity funds, and then started your own venture. Today, I think I want to focus, because we run a search firm, and day in and day out, we speak with a lot of talent. We work with quite a few startups as well. And what I feel is that which you guys have beautifully done, because we speak with a lot of talent from Drip also, and I believe that one thing which you guys have kept intact is the whole culture piece, right? And it's a very rare thing to see, because we see a lot of churn happening in the startup world, people moving jobs very, very frequently. But you guys have been able to retain talent, attract very high quality talent as well. So just wanted to understand, as a young founder, when you started out, since then till now, I think the journey has been long. So what has made you keep that culture intact, and why is it so important for any company to create that foundation?
So culture is, I would say, largely defined by the kind of people you bring on board, very much driven by the founders, and then of course the initial set of employees. And I think it kind of grows from there, right? And I would say that we've been fortunate to bring on board some really talented and great people. And I think we wouldn't have been here had the kind of folks who joined us wouldn't have been part of the journey. I think there've been like a few things which if I was to define what, how we reward talent, or how what kind of people typically fit in very well at Drip, I would say first is just folks who have very strong problem solving ability. I think folks who are excited about solving interesting problems, because I think what we are trying to do is somewhat unique. We are the market leader, and I don't think we've had much cut, copy, paste in terms of the model and in terms of the business we've built, right? And we've also seen that if you are fundamentally a strong problem solver, I don't think I think the domain matters a bit less. So that's been one thing. Second, I would say, is just humility. I think across the board, if you see all the leadership folks we have, as well as if you talk to anybody at Drip, I think one thing which will stand out is that while people are extremely accomplished, I think people also are very open to learning and continuing to learn, very open to feedback, very open to engaging with others. And the third thing I would say is that I think the point which you made about attrition and the fact that many startups have a huge challenge of talent churning. We've seen folks who've generally aligned with what we do. Like, they like what we do. They are they can relate to the mission. And that's also the reason why many of them have continued with us for a long time. And there's a founder mindset almost, right? Like, perhaps some of them have joined as employees, but they've been there long enough and they've seen the journey that they can. So I can say that many of those folks have this founder mindset, which again is then percolating down to some of the new folks also who come on board. So I would say, yeah, these are some of the things which have stood out, and we continue to preserve that as we bring on more talent and continue to grow.
Great. You spoke about founder mindset. I think this is one big challenge, at least when we run our business also at Scrabble as well as Jigsaw.
Yeah.
What we have seen is that obviously you want each and every employee to think like a founder, operate like a founder.
Yeah.
You can create policies around the person, so which
Yeah.
can give them the freedom, liberty to express themselves. But what I've seen is that eventually, I mean, an employee keeps thinking salary to salary. Employee keeps a short-term pain versus long-term gain. Very few people are able to internalize that thing. So, what exactly is a founder's mindset? If you have to articulate that in few words, that would be good to hear.
So to me, I think founder mindset is that you take accountability of not just the function, but you also think holistically about the company, and you almost operate like a founder. I think when you operate with a mindset that you are in a specific job, and you are supposed to do a specific function. The challenge oftentimes is that there's a lot of excuses, right? Like, you might say that, okay, my domain is finance, for example, and if it's anything to do with technology, it's not my problem, right? But I don't think particularly in a startup, problems are so well defined. Most things which you're trying to solve has dependencies on other functions, dependencies on other teams. So if you take full accountability, responsibility, and ownership of whatever problem you're trying to solve, that I think is what is, in my view, reflective of a founder mindset, right? And I think there's a few things we've tried to do, and perhaps that has helped. So one is, perhaps 3-4 years back, we started this meeting which the leadership team catches up pretty much every week, and we call it the 10x meeting. So what would it take for us to go 10x? And I think that becomes a great forum for me and as well as the leadership team to have a constant dialogue about what are the priorities for the company, are we focusing on the right things, and I think the biggest challenge is that if people have the full picture to the extent possible, that's when that alignment with the company and the overall vision is a lot more. Many times in job settings, people would know what is happening in their function, and oftentimes they're not super aware of the overall company. How is their function kind of relating to the bigger piece, right? And so that's been a conscious effort, which has obviously helped. Obviously, like most other startups, we really incentivize people on through equity. And that's very important for us. We would not bring on somebody in the leadership function unless they truly believe that there's value creation here possible. And that again is one of the things which helps folks, really believe in the longer term and what they can make of this, right?
You pointed this out about this meeting of 10x because there's extreme level of transparency which
Yeah.
is also required for your people to be able to take accountability.
Yeah.
So I'll just give you a small instance. So one of our employees went to interview with one of the global search firms, and in our company, what happens is that the bonus payouts, the incentive structure are extremely crystallized, that you will know exactly to the T throughout the year how much bonus or incentive is going to come in your bank account.
Right.
So that you don't walk out of the appraisal room. We don't have concept of appraisal, but it's not required, because
Yeah.
by the end of the year, you'll know exactly how much will be your increment and your bonus.
Okay.
But when this person asked this global firm that, I mean, is it this clear?
Yeah.
But that global firm also said that we have to deliberately keep it ambiguous. Otherwise, the profitability of the company should not exactly be clear. I mean, there has to we can't tell everything to people. So what's your view here? I mean, how
Yeah.
much can you showcase? How much can you hide? I know of companies who showcase the salaries of employees.
Yeah.
Every employee knows each and everybody's salary.
Right.
To what extent a company can express, and to what extent they can withhold the information.
I do believe in as much transparency as possible, particularly around the company performance, around revenue, particularly if things are not going well. I mean, of course, like most of the startups, last 2 years with the funding winter and generally what's been happening in the ecosystem, we also had to focus on profitability, and there were some hard decisions we had to take. But what I have seen is that if I have been honest about where we stand and what the current position of the company is, and then why certain decisions which we need to take, perhaps maybe hard but are important, I have seen a lot more alignment from people. And so I fundamentally come to believe that as if you are transparent about the key things about the company, that only goes a long way in aligning people and also making them feel like owners, right, to some extent. I don't think we go to the extent of like every employee knowing every
course.
employee's salary, but in general, we do have bands based on levels, based on functions. So we try our level best to be very transparent about that as well, right? And that is done through a pretty comprehensive exercise of market benchmarking, understanding where the market is at, and then how are we placed relative to the market. And everybody is pretty well aware of those bands and what are the ranges, right? Now within that, where exactly people's slot up, I think that is something we keep confidential with.
Sure. One thing which I've seen, Pushkar, a lot of founders are extremely sharp in terms of the idea how to create processes around the business and everything else. But one thing which I've seen founders struggling a lot is how to institutionalize your value system. Because founders get to work directly with the leaders. The leaders work with the managers work with right till the last employee.
Yeah.
If the person is able to speak the same language. For example, when I walk into a Vistara flight, I mean, I know what to expect, right? And I think it reflects the Tata culture completely.
Right.
So how have you guys gone about institutionalizing the whole value system itself?
So it's always a work in progress.
Okay.
I won't say we are perfect, but a lot of it has been through articulating what are the values we stand for, and then also constantly evaluating whether, while it's one thing to lay out the values, but being very honest and constantly evaluate whether where do we stand in respect to those values, right? And having an honest exercise around that every 6 months, every year is important, because then you also know which triggers or which specific levers do you need to move on, right? The second thing is to some extent also recognizing people who exhibit those values, and through our rewards recognition, through the appraisal cycle, clearly highlighting that, okay, if we stand for customer centricity, has that employee sort of gone above and beyond on that particular value, and then rewarding that, and again being very transparent about why a particular person is getting recognized for a certain value, again helps build that culture within the organization that, okay, this is what the organization also values, this is what the organization will reward. right? So these are probably the two things: just being very articulate about the values, and also constantly evaluating, are we continuing to exhibit those values, or and then do they make sense to be even listed as one of our values, right? If
Sure.
you can list a value, but if you don't exhibit that, then perhaps you need to revisit how you define your values itself. And then, as I said, the second thing is just rewarding people who exhibit those values. Yeah.
How did the young Pushkar? I mean, I believe that you studied from Georgia, then went to Wharton, and then started Drip at a very young age. And then whatever you have created out of Drip,
Yeah.
what were your biggest challenges through this journey? I mean, and
Yeah.
I mean, being so young, how are you able to generate that wisdom in terms of rallying people, etc., etc.?
Yeah.
Would love to understand that. Does it come from your upbringing as well? How much does your upbringing play a role in making that happen?
So of course, partly it does sort of come from upbringing. I think I come from a community of businesses. My dad, my father is a doctor, but he started his own hospital and has always had that entrepreneurial streak. So I've seen that growing up, and uh, of course the journey has been kind of fascinating. I think. And lots of learnings, lot of things which as a first time founder you get wrong, and then you learn. So some of the things I can highlight, right? So I, before starting Drip, I'd spent a number of years in venture capital, also
Yeah.
in consulting, right?
Yeah.
So I was in roles which were highly analytical in nature, but not as operational in nature, right? So it was not like I was ever in a sales role or an operations role. So the biggest I guess challenge for me was to switch from being overly analytical about every problem, about everything we were doing, to really hit the ground running. And I think we went through Y Combinator early on in the
Yeah.
startup journey, and that was again a great experience, right? I think YC goes with the mantra that the best thing to move forward is to do stuff. You can keep sitting in the room analyzing the problem, but till you don't talk to your customers, till you don't actually execute and really like go out in the market, you're not really going to learn much. So that was early on a key learning that oftentimes folks who come from such backgrounds tend to be sort of overly analytical, but beyond the point, you don't know what, you can't actually analyze everything and come to the solution on Excel sheets. You just have to go out there and do it. Second aspect, from a learning standpoint, was also just around people, right? I think while of course I had managed smaller teams in my past professional career, but when you start out, you obviously bring on your initial team, and this is the story with every startup. As the startup starts scaling, not every function scales, not every person scales, and it's always a very tough call which you need to make, whether you need to either bring on someone senior or have that hard conversation with people. And I've seen that time and again, the best strategy is to be very honest and transparent about it. And many times, if you avoid that conversation, eventually what happens is that, like eventually the outcome is the same, but you're just delaying the inevitable. So that has been the second learning, that around people matters. It's more important to be transparent and honest about what is working out and what is not. The third thing is just around, when early on, when we started as first time founders, early founders, we also had a lot of advisors, right? Like people giving us gyan on various things. And I think you start realizing that, of course, it's great to hear from everyone, and sometimes it's useful, but you do have to go with your conviction, and you probably are the best judge of what's happening. You understand the customer and the market better than perhaps most people who are externally advising you. And of course, over time, I have started believing a lot more in I have conviction on certain things, and despite resistance, I'll go ahead and do it, because I believe that that's the right path, and that confidence has only sort of continued to develop as we've grown as a company.
So between heart and brain, I mean, how much what should be the right combination? I mean, I'm sure there is no right answer for this,
Yeah.
but for a founder or for early members in a startup, how important is to follow your brain versus following your heart, and
Yeah.
or being emotional with it?
So yes, I do believe that you have to be objective. Whatever data you can get access to, you do have to make decisions based on data and based on, as far as possible, objectivity. But I also believe that most founders who are successful have had a very strong belief in the idea or in the business they were building. Elon Musk started
Yeah.
Tesla when the whole world told him that electric cars is a no-go, and he kept going and kept aligning people to his vision till such time that it actually became a reality, and then the entire world then aligns with him, right?
Because I believe that, I looked at the journey of Steve Jobs, for example. I think brain will get you started,
Yeah.
but heart will get you going. I think when I look at his biography or even the movies which has been created around his life,
Yeah.
he was a man of heart. And
Yeah.
most of the leaders, when we look at them, you'll see that what an irrational person, but they're
Yeah.
doing some really great stuff as well. So when we hire for Drip also, there's a general perception that there's a very strong bias towards people with strong educational pedigrees as well, right? And that we have seen across consulting as well as private equity funds or venture capital fund hiring also. And but at the same time, you have founders who don't come with strong pedigrees or who are dropouts also.
Yeah.
So when you guys hire, is there any specific? Is this subconscious thing, or is there any specific conscious decision which you guys have taken towards hiring people who come with, let's say, an Ivy League or an IT or an IIM background?
We started with folks who came on board early on, and we happened to have folks who came with strong educational pedigree. And oftentimes, some of our best hires have been through the networks. So if we have somebody from an IIT or IIM, oftentimes a lot of the references which have come also have come from that network, and that has been one factor. The only fun function where I would say that we've seen that it can help is in the capital markets function, because we do end up engaging with a lot of hedge funds, credit funds, family offices. So folks who come from strong educational pedigree, that adds some amount of credibility when investors are investing in the assets we originate. And secondly, many times they may also come with certain networks, which are also, of course, extremely helpful as we scale up that side of the.
So you have done your education from US. You spent what, close to 6-7 years?
I was there for about 8 years.
8 years, and I believe that you also have people working in US as well as Mexico and any other country.
No.
Okay, all right. US, Mexico, and India. If India has to see that, growth over the next decade, which compared to all the other countries, India is on the forefront from the pace of growth standpoint. We need more and more entrepreneurs or people thinking like an entrepreneur in India. So I personally feel that we are somewhere lagging compared to a country like a US. For instance, I think people are much more enterprising there compared to what we see here. Do you agree with this hypothesis, or you feel that it's there, it's correct right now, but it's changing as well?
I personally don't completely agree with it.
Okay.
I feel Indians are extremely enterprising. It's a country of small businesses. You would see businesses right from your local chaiwala to some of the large corporations. So as a country, I think we are fairly entrepreneurial. Now, if we specifically talk about the startup ecosystem, the venture ecosystem, yes, there is a big difference. Of course, and that's, of course, people are changing, things are evolving. But for a long time, India was most of the models which were getting funded, as well as most of the companies which were getting started in India, oftentimes were more like, if it has worked in the US, then it might work in India. So you're kind of cut, copy, pasting that model. That is evolving now, where people are starting to look at problems which are related to Bharat, and maybe perhaps unique to India. So that's definitely one change which is happening. But would we say that we have gotten to the point where people are willing to take on very large challenges, and people are also looking at building world class companies on the innovation or technology side? That we haven't yet seen that happen as much. The risk appetite amongst people and the kinds of problems and the kinds of businesses people want to build, people may have crazy ideas and they will still go ahead and pursue it. In India, we haven't seen that as much yet.
Is it the ecosystem challenge though? Because I mean, the same Indian, when that person goes to US,
Yeah.
I mean,
Of course, it is
yeah,
an ecosystem challenge as well. Investors are also now starting to see their second, third fund cycle. There are initial successes now, which then is changing the mindset of investors to now also believe that you can create world class companies. Perhaps you may have a Google from India, a Google equivalent from India in the next 10-15 years.
Yeah.
Um, but till such time that you don't see that, people are going to be conservative. People are going to be very thoughtful about where they're deploying capital, and it's all a chicken and egg problem, right?
Yeah.
Like somebody may have a crazy idea, but if there's no money backing that idea, then it's unlikely to take off. And but I think things are changing.
So what can we do to create more Googles, Facebook, Teslas of the world from India?
One part is, of course, talent,
Yeah.
which is that in many of these sort of cutting edge technology companies, you do need the right kind of technical talent, which is slowly sort of coming about. Second is capital. You do need risk capital where people are willing to take bets on such ideas, and then I think entrepreneurship is there in the
Acha.
country. I feel like there are enough people who want to start. There is a very strong entrepreneurial ecosystem in India, and people will take on larger problems and work on more crazy ideas. But both these things also have to kind of grow in parallel.
So let's say if you had to start a VC today, I mean, or set up a family office and start investing in different ideas, but what are those ideas which you are most excited towards?
To me, a startup which is solving a critical problem is a good problem to solve, right? And of course, the business model and how it makes money over time, all of that follows. But the fundamental thing is that you need to be solving a problem which is real.
Sure.
And YC also fundamentally believes in this mantra. They constantly talk about make something people want. Very simple. Just make something people want, right? And then eventually people will pay for it. Eventually you will build a business around it and you will also grow. So to me, that is the fundamental thing. And if I'm not a big angel investor, not a very prolific angel investor, but I do make some angel investments. India has a lot of unique problems, right? So anybody who's solving for Bharat, anybody who is actually looking at whatever they're building, but in the context of whether this is relevant for India, those are the ideas which I get excited about. So, India is a largely agrarian economy, and we've seen only few companies come up in the agri-tech space, for example, and there's a long way to go. On the healthcare, we have, again, unique challenges where we have a highly distributed population. Rural healthcare still continues to be a challenge. But again, we haven't seen as much innovation there, right? But those are very critical problems which somebody needs to solve. And if you are able to figure out a way to solve them, it's a good idea in my view.
And from a character sketch standpoint, what kind of entrepreneur you will be willing to back?
I do think that a startup success is heavily dependent on the founders and their mindset and how passionate or how determined are they to make it work. Because see, everything can change, right? Like the market which you're focusing on can change, the product itself can change, the business you are in can change, and the startup journey is a complete roller coaster. So there will be so many instances where you feel like giving up.
Yeah.
And companies which survive are sort of are able to navigate that and are determined enough that they don't want to give up, right? So the startup actually early stages, I do believe startup fails when the founder gives up.
Yeah, yeah.
So as long as you have founders who are not going to give up, who are extremely persistent and determined, that to me is like one of the like, I think it's grit.
You mentioned about YC twice, and I think your company is also YC backed.
Yeah.
And it remains a very aspirational thing to be backed by a YC. I think they receive so many applications.
Yeah.
So two things. One is why is it so aspirational and difficult to being backed by a YC?
Aspirational because I guess they have had a very strong track record. There have been a lot of successes. You think about companies like an Airbnb or a Dropbox, Reddit. All these are YC companies in the Indian context as well. Now Zepto or
Yeah.
a Razorpay. So success is a big factor. Of course, as you've had some successful companies come out of the YC program, that has obviously helped build the brand. And the second thing is that of course the aspiration aspect also comes from the fact that it's a huge demand supply issue, right? YC was one of the pioneers in early stage investing. They were one of the first ones to start this whole kind of the structure around having a batch based approach to investing and kind of incubating startups, which now, of course, some other accelerators have also kind of come on board. But just in terms of acceptance rates, what I understand is that YC acceptance rate is actually, it's tougher than getting into Harvard. So just the number of applications which they have versus how many people eventually get in. So that again adds to the competition.
So what is next for Pushkar? What keeps you still hungry?
Yeah.
And raring to go. What is it you foresee going ahead? What is the end game you're chasing?
The startup journey, as I mentioned at the very beginning, is phenomenal. Every 6 months, your role continues to evolve, continues to change, and I see that still continuing to happen despite being at it for more than 7 years now. The challenges are not the same. The challenges early on are very different than the kind of challenges we work on today, the kind of problems we need to solve today. As long as I'm working on something interesting, it continues to be exciting, continues to be engaging for me. In terms of the end game, to me, I guess, we are in a very interesting opportunity. We have a very interesting opportunity ahead of us. We are focused on the small business segment, very, very large opportunity. And it's up to us to execute and continuing to serve and bring on board and help many, many small businesses, right? So from that standpoint, it's all about execution. It's about continuing to build a platform and continuing to scale up.
So thanks a lot for your time, Pushkar. It was really great conversing with you. I think I got to learn a lot in terms of how a business is built, how cultures are built. What are the kind of challenges you foresee as well.
Yeah.
But would love to understand if you have any parting thoughts which you would like to end with.
The parting thought for me would be that building anything worthwhile takes a long time, and there is you oftentimes see in the market that there's a tendency that I want to build something which I can flip, or people expect success in a very short amount of time. But I do fundamentally believe that building anything worthwhile takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, and overnight success is never really overnight. And so people should have the patience and people should put in the work required, and that's the thing which I would suggest to any aspiring entrepreneur.
Super. In fact, this makes me remember about. So we were chatting with Ankit Nagori, and one thing which he spoke and it stuck with me a lot is that any entrepreneur has to think 10 years, and
Yes.
in those 10 years. They will have 40 good quarters. 4 good quarters, not 40.
Yeah.
And those 4 good quarters might not come back to back. And one good quarter will come, then there will be a complete lull period. But you have to not give up and then keep continuing till you see that thing through.
Yes.
But I completely agree with you.
Yeah. And coming from an investing background, I think one thing I can also say is that it's very easy to build the business in Excel. Like, you put a formula and then every quarter you're supposed to just grow.
Yeah.
But actually executing on it and build something worthwhile and being able to execute on it is 95% is oftentimes execution, 5% is ideation. So
Yeah.
I fundamentally believe that.
Super. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.